Thanks for being here, everybody. We're joined now by two buddies of ours who have important things to talk to you all about. Omeed Malik, he's the founder of 1789 Capital, and Donald Trump Jr., who is also involved with 1789 Capital. They're working hard on the parallel economy, working hard on saving America. Gentlemen, appreciate you being with us. Thanks, and tell us what you're up to these days.
Thanks. This is Omeed. Great to be with you guys again. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Loud and clear.
Beautiful. So what we're most excited about, there's a ton of stuff that we can talk about today, but most, I think, imminently, we've talked about this before. What Don and I have been doing for almost 5 years now is trying to protect our constitutional rights in the private sector. Last time we spoke, I was talking to you guys about the First Amendment and transactional freedom with Public Square. Well, we're moving on now, and we're going to try to protect the Second Amendment, which has definitely been under attack, as you guys know. We're taking a company called Grab-A-Gun public just in a few weeks here. The deal is going to close on July 15th and ring the New York Stock Exchange bell right after that to have this company get over $100 million of cash and to be a publicly traded company. It's basically like an Amazon of guns and ammunition. So we're super excited about it, and that's what we've been making the rounds on. I wanted to talk to you and your listeners about.
That's awesome. We're talking to Omeed Malik, 1789 Capital, also Donald Trump Jr. I saw you guys in D.C. recently, and we're fired up. I mean, full disclosure, Buck and I are invested with 1789 Capital. We believe in a lot of what you guys are doing. You've now been, I'll address Donald Trump Jr. here, seeing the craziness since your dad came down that escalator about a decade ago. We had a big decision to make, Democrats did. Hey, are they going to be crazier or are they going to come back to sanity? It seems like they have doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on crazy, which means these alternative investments, building new conservative American valued companies, is even more of a great investment thesis going forward.
I think so, 100%, guys. You guys have seen it. We've been talking about it. I mean, what my father and the administration has been doing, trying to stop the sort of politicization and weaponization of government, Omeed and I are trying to do in the private sector. For so long, companies that did things that followed the basic tenets of American freedom and liberty, they'd be shut down. The big guys on Wall Street wouldn't give them funding, even if it was a great business, because they didn't check off some boxes of some woke nonsense that's out there. So you can't just take care of the stuff from the government side. You also have to do it from the private sector. So I think taking a gun company public on the New York Stock Exchange is sort of an ultimate maybe FU to some of the nonsense that we've seen out there that we have to combat. And you're 100% right, Buck, or I guess that was Clay, that what we've seen out there right now is, even in the last election, right, there was a mandate from the American people to just bring back common sense, bring back normalcy, bring back some decency. But the Democrats can't even seem to grasp that. You saw what happened just this week in the New York City Democrat primary election, where you took a guy like a radical leftist like Andrew Cuomo, and rather than a guy like that winning, where at least fine, we understand what he did during COVID. He was a dictator. He was all these things, and yet it didn't matter. We're going to find someone even more radical than that, someone who's an avowed, Islamist communist, who's said some of the craziest things in the world. And I mean, the quotes that I see on a daily basis, spewing woke nonsense, LBGT rights or whatever. I can't even, you read it, it's like I feel like I'm watching an episode of South Park. So, I think that bodes well for conservatives in the future, because the average American certainly isn't there. But the leaders of the Democrat Party, they can't even disavow. They can't even do it. They can't help but continually perpetuate this kind of nonsense. And you saw that with the silence and or glowing endorsements from Bill Clinton, from Chuck Schumer, about this guy that's probably the most radical person to ever be possibly elected into American politics.
We're speaking to Omeed Malik and Don Jr., of course, Don Jr., Donald Trump Jr.'s son, of 1789 Capital. They're telling us about grabagun.com, new project they're working on that is going to revolutionize the online gun buying industry. But guys, Omeed, I want to put this to you. I remember, and I know you do too, what it was like just a few years ago in those dark days of the Biden administration, for example, when there was this sneer of whatever conservatives, build your own internet, build your own Amazon, build your own payment processors. Talk, if you could, about what we're seeing with the creation of that parallel economy, which is really just a free speech and capitalist economy, one that isn't overrun by woke madness. But what are some of the steps that you're involved with, or some of the projects that you see on the horizon, where the business of the American people can be business again and not announcing their pronouns in every email?
Well, I think the first thing is just going back to exactly, you were there right next to us, helping us build this whole thing. But it all starts, really, the modern history of this issue with a company called Parler. I don't know if you guys remember that company.
Oh, yeah.
Parler.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So one of our business partners was the main funder of that, a woman named Rebecca Mercer. It was exactly what you said. Back then, we didn't have any of the social media companies. Facebook was against us. Remember, Twitter was totally against us. So there was really no outlet. So they used to say, well, if you don't like it, go build your own. So a bunch of conservatives did. They went and they started Parler. It became the number one social media app in the country. And in January of 21, 3 big tech companies colluded to destroy it. Amazon, because of Amazon Web Services, and then Apple and Google, because they then work together and let you download it on your phones, either the Android or the iPhone. And now the major question that I started thinking about at that time, and this is where Don and I really started getting going on this, was what if there were elements of the federal government that told them to do that they just didn't act as private companies, even though they're probably monopolies. And that's where you had this nexus, or kind of this joining of forces to really deprive us of our constitutional rights, because that's the key. If the federal government was getting involved in using private companies to backdoor the suppression of speech, which, by the way, all of us on our phone and your listeners know, they were definitely doing that during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So they were using private companies that went along with it, which they never should have, to deprive us of our rights. It was at that point we knew we had to fight back. And one of the first steps in fighting back was what Don and his dad did with a company called Truth Social, which went public via SPAC. You saw the overwhelming success of that company. And what that signaled to those of us who were financiers that wanted to do something was that people were so fed up, they weren't just going to vote at the ballot box, they were going to vote their dollars now too, and support a company to go public. You then saw it with Rumble, which Don was one of the first investors in. You then saw it with Public Square, which me and Don took public 2 years ago. And now you're seeing it again here with Grab-A-Gun. And this is how we're going to fight back. It's by promoting and providing that financing that Don is talking about. That's how they were winning. They weren't allowing banks under the ESG paradigm to even loan to gun companies, even if they're profitable. So it's this uneconomic behavior that then provided the opportunity for us to push back. And by the way, it's totally capitalistic what we're doing. If you want to ruin your company and make it woke and only kind of cater to those random voices that we know are not the majority of the country, go ahead and keep doing that. It makes no sense. But Don and I, you guys, and a bunch of the rest of us are going to join forces when we all became friends during the dark days of the Biden administration and provide the rest of the country options across the board in every aspect of their lives.
You know, you guys, I believe, both have daughters, and congratulations to you, Donald Trump Jr. I think that was really well said, Omeed. Your daughter's going to be going to play at the University of Miami, and she's a great golfer. But I think this really crystallizes for a lot of our audience, and Buck has learned it too. The sports media became so far left-wing that they started arguing men should be able to win women's championships. And as the fathers of daughters, and I know we got a lot of people out there that are driving their daughters around all over the country during summer to do competitions at the highest level. I'll start with you, but I want you to weigh in too on this, Omeed. But as the father of a daughter accepting a golf scholarship, she's an incredible athlete. What do you think, Donald Trump Jr., when you see men say, hey, I should be able to win women's championships?
I think it's insane, and I think the rest of the country thinks it's insane. I mean, the whole trans mafia thing was sort of a wild. How this group of people that's 0.02% of a population somehow were able to become so holier than thou, so beyond reproach that no one even questioned it. I was one of the early guys on this issue because again, being a girl dad, having young female athletes, trust me, the triple headers of T-ball and the equivalent. That's brutal. What I was always shocked is, where are the moms that are doing a lot of this work as well, that they're just going along with this nonsense blindly? And I started tweeting about it. I think the Daily Wire put up an article a couple of weeks ago. It was like, wow, Don Jr. was on this issue in 2017 when it was like 1 or 2, state championships being won, by a dude. And it wasn't really that big. I'm just like, this is absurd. And this was Twitter 1.0, right? Before there was free speech on there. So it was 90% radical left, 10% conservative. And I put up these tweets about it. And I knew it wasn't something that was real. I knew it was always fake and made up, because even then, when it was stacked against me, I'd put up these tweets, and the haters that just want to comment on anything that I post would be on there and be like, oh, I can't believe it. I hate Don Jr. so much, but he's actually 100% right on this. So even the left didn't buy into it. So, this is a 90-10, if not a 99-1 issue that is so basic. But, I guess the problem you have is some of the people, the soccer moms whose entire lives delve around virtue signaling and being able to impress their friends in a line at Starbucks while actually not fighting for anything real. They made that thing a little bit more real than it ever was, but I think it's dying, and you see that in the numbers, you see that in the polling, you see that in people who aren't otherwise political, could even be left-leaning, coming out and saying, okay, yeah, enough is enough of this stuff. It's actually, nuts. So, I think that whole thing has jumped the shark, but it continues to this day. Obviously my father campaigned on this thing. His administration is going to do what they can from the federal government standpoint side of it. But I love the Democrats and, especially the power players in the Democrat Party just forcing themselves to go all in because, Trump said X, so we have to do the exact opposite of X and go all in on the issue because they're just ostracizing the American public. They're showing people how far out of touch they really are because no one's actually bought in on this. No one who has a daughter actually thinks that this is a good idea. And frankly, no one who has a son, other than people who are perhaps gaming it to get their son, who was otherwise a journeyman athlete, some sort of scholarship, unless they're playing that game, which I'm sure some are, no one believes in this nonsense. But it was a shame watching sports over the last decade. ESPN, it's like I can't tell if I'm watching ESPN or if I'm watching like the radical left version of CNN at any given moment. They went so all in on this that it was amazing to see the sports media complex perhaps outwoke even the radical leftist in conventional, political and business media.
Speaking of Omeed, Malik, and Don Jr. of 1789 Capital, I just got one more for you, Omeed, before we got to run to a break, and it's first of all, very exciting. You guys are on grabagun.com. I am somebody who buys guns online, so I'm looking forward to getting in on that. Also, there's some fun stuff in the big, beautiful bill that pertains to items that might be easier to purchase in the firearms world. That
guys, I heard the parliamentarians trying to strip some of that stuff out. So make sure to call your congressmen and your senators to get that back in.
Oh, wow.
The stuff
okay, that's a good heads up.
Stuff like, yeah.
They're trying to mess with my suppressors. This is going to be a problem. We're going to have to light up the lines on that. Thank you for the heads up on that. But Omeed, you and Don, you're investors, you're businessmen, so you got to see the trends and you got to be right. Today, we're talking about how people's 401ks are kicking ass. The economy's looking really solid. What is the case for optimism that it can get better? Because it's already pretty darn good under Trump 2.0. If things go the way they're supposed to, the big, beautiful bill gets passed, what do you see in the future?
It's absolutely going to be tremendous. I'll tell you why. There's a Trump economy that's being put into place in many different aspects. The first is unleashing one of our best things that we have that we've been suppressing, which is energy. Energy makes the world go round. It's something that we've suppressed because we've had an issue, again, based on ESG paradigm to try to suppress fossil fuels. We need to unleash that. The second thing we're doing right now, as you're seeing, is we're closing the border. When you close the border, you actually increase wages for working people in America because you're not allowing illegal aliens to come in and work for about 3 cents on the dollar. So that's also happening. The third thing that you're doing with the big, beautiful bill is you're codifying the Trump tax cuts. So you're going to keep corporate and personal tax rates very low. And then what you've been able to do is also generate revenue from tariffs into our system because people have been taking advantage of us. When you add all those things together, and here's the last part that I don't think people are paying enough attention to, when you actually get someone like Jerome Powell, who's going to be out in January, out of the Fed, who's actually been inhibiting growth by keeping rates high, I think for political purposes, you're going to put a Fed chair that knows what he's doing in there. It's game over in a great way. You're going to see the economy rip even further, but that's another catalyst people aren't talking about, and that happens just in time for the midterms.
Omeed and Don, great work as always. Thanks for calling in to tell us about what you guys are up to. Keep it going, and let's keep this economy roaring and keep the parallel economy growing alongside it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
The week after next, the U.S. dollar is actually going to be the center of a debate, not here in the U.S., but in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, to be exact. There's a BRIC nations meeting going on. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China. You know what they're trying to do? Get away from the dollar as our global reserve currency. This is their plan. They're hoping to undo the dollar's global dominance of the past 80 years. If they're able to do this year or in the years ahead, it could really affect the value of the dollars you've saved. So what can you do to protect yourself? How can you take individual action now so that you are diversified? Gold, my friends. Protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout of this possible landmark shift by diversifying with gold from the Birch Gold Group. In times of uncertainty and given the debt that we have, gold makes sense. Birch Gold's a company I buy my gold from. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting my name, Buck, to 989898. Arm yourself with info to diversify your retirement savings. Text Buck to the number 989898 and get with Birch Gold today.